So we discussed recently that Jordan Peterson seemingly endorsed Mike Pence on Twitter. He said something to the effect of, he would be a return to normalcy, and wouldn't that be nice? Now, that is hilarious because Jordan Peterson, for a long time, sort of played hide the ball with his politics, right? He would act like he's kind of a centrist or an old school classical liberal, but as time went by and he made the deal with the Daily Wire, it became clear that the topics that he covers are pretty much standard right-wing grievance stuff. And it's at the point now, if you're endorsing Mike Pence, there is no more plausible deniability. You can't play this game of, I'm an old school liberal, or I'm a centrist. No, Mike Pence, don't get it twisted, is what we call an arch conservative. You know what that means? He's an extreme conservative on everything. He's a neocon when it comes to foreign policy. He's never met a war he didn't like. He supported the torture under the Bush administration. This is a guy who credits his career to Rush Limbaugh. Right-wing fire breather Rush Limbaugh, who's wrong about everything. That's who he is. This is a guy who's questioned evolution, questioned climate change. On economics, he's a hardcore, unfettered, free market, laissez-faire capitalist guy where he wants a total dog-eat-dog world. He wants to deregulate the marketplace as much as possible. He wants to cut taxes on the wealthy as much as possible. He wants to destroy what remains of our social safety net, cut Medicare, cut Social Security, cut Medicaid, get rid of cash assistance to people, even at the bottom end. This is what he is. He is an arch conservative. He's George W. Bush, except even more fundamentalist religious, and he sounds a hell of a lot faker than George W. Bush did. Okay, so anyway, there's a million parts in this discussion that they had on this podcast that I could show you. But I wanted to focus on this part because he's really humiliating himself here. And this is what I like to call a festival of wrongness. So you're going to have Mike Pence discuss foreign policy, and this might take me a while to break down. Let's dive into it.
Putin respects Biden as a negotiating partner, and do you think that Putin would respect you as a negotiating partner, and maybe why to both of those questions?
Well, it would be hard for me to believe that Putin or any leader around the world, I think they respect the United States of America, but I don't know that they respect the president of the United States today at the level that they should. And it just comes from a series of steps by this administration. To unilaterally reopen Nord Stream 2 to Russia. I mean, it was a policy of appeasement to reverse one of the policies we'd put into effect. Made no sense at all. To attempt to get back into the Iran nuclear deal, literally hat in hand, begging the mullahs in Iran to come back to the table and renegotiate until it finally fell apart was just absurd.
It was absurd to say we should get back in the Iran nuclear agreement. For those of you who haven't followed the ins and outs of this, let me explain. Trump and Pence pulled out of the Iran nuclear agreement, ripped it up, which was effectively spitting in their face and telling Iran, you shouldn't take us at our word, you shouldn't take the United States at our word, and nobody should. Why? Because that was a deal that was reached by the U.S. and Iran, but also included the international community. What was in that deal? We said, hey man, we'll give you back your own money, and we will lift the sanctions if you allow the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, into your country to make sure you're not creating a nuclear weapon, and to the extent you have nuclear power, it is only what's allowed under international law, which is for research and for your power grid. That's what it was. It was verified over a dozen times that Iran was following the nuclear agreement. It was verified. So Trump goes in there, Pence goes in there, rips it up, and then, oh, would you look at that? All of a sudden, they start up a weapons program again. Gee, I wonder why. Now, by the way, we had violated the agreement a number of times. And then we pull out and rip it up. Again, why would anybody take our word for it? So Biden on the campaign trail was like, I'm going to get back in the Iran nuclear agreement. He was correct. He was right. The problem is, Joe Biden, being the idiot he is, he wanted to appease idiot arch conservatives and neocons like Mike Pence. So he gets in there and he goes, we're not going to jump right back in. We're going to make the conditions, the deal, even tougher than it was, and then we'll get them back in it. Well, the Iranians are not going to play that game because they already abided by the agreement. You spit in their eye. You ripped up the deal. Why would they accept even harsher terms to get back in the agreement when they didn't violate it in the first place? So that was the problem. The problem was that Biden was too conservative. He was listening too much to people like Mike Pence. That's the problem. And he makes it seem like it's the opposite. He makes it seem like, Biden's some sort of a cuck to the Iranians, when no, Biden should have went back and jumped into the agreement because it was working. And who cares what idiots like Mike Pence think who just want a war with Iran anyway?
And of course, the fact that we had negotiated an agreement in Afghanistan with the Taliban that made it clear that they were required to work with the Afghan national government, never harm any military personnel, and never harbor terrorists. Those were the three preconditions. Or we made it clear to them that we would hit them harder than they'd ever been hit before. 18 months went by in our administration and the early days of this one where there was not a single American casualty.
There was a record number of Afghan civilian casualties, though. Funny how you left that out. Funny how you left that out. Because Afghan civilians don't really matter to you. They don't really count. It's them. They're over there. They're guilty enough anyway. So, hey, it is what it is. They increased the airstrikes. They increased the drone strikes over 400% under Trump and Pence. Massive civilian casualties. And they love that. They love it. But he makes it seem like, oh, we were dealing with the Taliban and we were being real tough guys. And then Biden had to come in and mess it all up. Listen.
The Taliban knew we meant business. But in this administration, when we began an orderly withdrawal, which for some incomprehensible reason got delayed into well after the fighting season. And if you recall, President Biden, it was leaked that they were talking about making the departure on September 11th, which was incomprehensible to me that we would mark that date, a date of a dark day in American history, the source of which was launched from Afghanistan for the withdrawal.
Try Saudi Arabia. Try Saudi Arabia, your ally.
In any event, that he moved the date of withdrawal, he delayed it, he gave the Taliban the opportunity to reconstitute. But the initial failing was when the Taliban began to move their military in the north into Mazar al-Sharif, and we did nothing.
So in other words, you should have sent more troops. You should have invaded even harder. You should have attacked even harder. You should have done a war on Afghanistan, bro. Where the hell have you been the past 20 years? Where the hell have you been? So understand what he's saying. He's talking about well, yeah, me and Trump talked a lot about maybe getting out of Afghanistan, and we were maybe negotiating a deal to get out of Afghanistan and stuff. But ultimately, Biden was the one who actually did it. Idiot. Yeah, he's the one that actually had the balls to follow through with the stuff that you guys only talked about. With the stuff that you guys only laid the framework for. He actually had the balls to do it. And by the way, the entire media turned on him when he did it. And to his credit, he stood up and basically said, piss off. Because what do you want, right? Yeah, when you rip the Band-Aid off, it's going to hurt. Bad things are going to happen when you make a change. But it had to happen at some point. Would you want to stay there another year? How about 5? How about 10? How about 20? And what, you think everything would be all hunky-dory if we continue to spend billions of dollars per day in Afghanistan? Is that what you want? Just say it. Stop being Weasley. Stop playing hide the ball. Just say it. But you know what? To his credit, he kind of does there. He's like, well, when we saw this happening, we did nothing. What we should have done is what, Mike? Send thousands more U.S. troops? Do more airstrikes? Do more drone strikes? Do more bombings? You think we're going to bomb our way out of this? We've been bombing for goddamn 20 years, and we have Dickie McGeezax to show for it? Has anybody ever been more weaselly and wrong than Mike Pence in this clip? He attacks him over the Iran deal because he says you're not being hard enough on Iran, when the problem is he's being too hard on Iran. And now you attack him over the Afghanistan withdrawal, when again, he actually had the balls to do it when you guys just talked about it and made a framework for it. But you were too afraid to actually pull the trigger on it. He did. He did. It's one of the few base things that he did.
I think that set into motion not only the disaster that claimed the lives of 13 American servicemen and women, courageous servicemen and women who were standing at the airport in Kabul trying to save lives, But I actually think it set the conditions for the Afghan National Army to throw their guns down, make no opposition.
That is complete and utter bullshit. Dude, that army was made of paper mache. It was a paper tiger. There was no, oh, it laid the conditions for them to do it. They were going to throw their weapons down no matter what anyway. They didn't know who they were fighting for. They didn't know what they were fighting for. They didn't know why. They didn't want to lose their lives to the Taliban, who are better fighters and actually have an ideology and a reason to fight. Who are you kidding, man? He's so full of it.
We've also confirmed and at least in one instance, taken successful action against them harboring terrorists once again in Afghanistan. But all of those conditions, I believe, may well, I don't know.
Did he say what I think he just said?
Also confirmed and at least in one instance, taken successful action against them harboring terrorists once again in Afghanistan.
Do you know what he's referring to there? I think he's referring to that strike that Biden did after the airport was hit and some of our people died. I think he's referring to the airstrike we did after that, where he says, oh yeah, we went after people who were harboring terrorists. And no, that story was totally bogus. It was totally made up, and we learned it soon thereafter that they ended up killing civilians. They bombed civilians. It was just like, hey, our guys got bombed, let's just bomb some of theirs. They didn't care that it was civilians. They just wanted a PR win. That's what Biden did. It was egregious. It was a war crime, and he's bringing that up as if it's a positive. Oh, we got them harboring terrorists. It wasn't terrorists. It was not terrorists. You see how this guy thinks about the world? It's just pure good guy, pure bad guy, America amazing, everybody else terrible. We're the big swinging dick that tells everybody what to do. We're the world policeman, and we never do anything wrong ever. Or if we do, it's only our weakness. It's that we don't bomb enough. We're not aggressive enough. We don't run the world enough. It's super imperialist and neocon, and it is devastating. Now, by the way, let's listen to this last point here, because it's just the cherry on top.
And since then, we've also confirmed and at least in one instance, taken successful action against them harboring terrorists once again in Afghanistan. But all of those conditions, I believe, may well, I don't know, may well have contributed to Putin assuming that if he rolled into Ukraine, that the same thing would happen.
Yeah, the reason Putin invaded Ukraine is because he saw the U.S. pull out of Afghanistan and said, that's a good reason for me to invade Ukraine, because look, America's weak. America's retreating around the world. That's now I think it's a good time to do it. Are you kidding me? So what, you have a principled objection to withdrawing from any war, even if it's an evil war and a bad war and a wrong war, because it sends a bad message to our enemies and they get emboldened. So you want to stay in Iraq forever too? By the way, we're still in Iraq. You want to stay in there forever? Is that what you want to do? We spent $7 trillion in there, and I have nothing to show for it. It was a country that didn't attack us. We did an illegal and offensive invasion. We ordered torture to cover it up. And your ass still wants to stay there? Because, God forbid, Kim Jong-un sees that and says, now America's weak, so now I'm going to take more territory in China or whatever. Are you kidding me, man? Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ. So in other words, Biden was so weak, that's why Putin did what he did. No, I think Putin's very open and honest and clear about why he did what he did. I mean, he gave a speech and basically said, we want to try to reestablish the Russian Empire. We would like to go back to those old borders, please. And he also gives the rationalization of like, well, we felt threatened by the West and NATO, which is one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, which, by the way, if that's true, and to whatever extent it's true, again, it's the opposite of what Mike Pence is saying. He's like, be more bellicose, be more aggressive, be more hardline, be more imperialist, when the real takeaway should have been, we should have done negotiation and diplomacy and conversation early on to be clear, hey, our intentions are not to take you down. Our intentions are totally defensive. We're not going to go closer to your border, even though we did that and we said we wouldn't do it, but we did it. In other words, he gets everything exactly wrong. Everything exactly wrong. The good news is even Jordan Peterson's fans are like, I don't know about this guy, man. And why? Because, I mean, I don't agree with their reasoning 100%. It's only part true. It's like, oh, he is the establishment, and that's why I don't agree with him. It's not just that he's the establishment, which he is. He's also an arch conservative. He's a corrupt neocon. He's right-wing on every issue. He credits his career to Rush Limbaugh. He's just Rush Limbaugh in a smirk and a suit who puts on a very polite, gentlemanly tone. That's what he is. But this, as I said, was a festival of wrongness. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.